Hi, welcome back. I've slowly shifted the niche of this channel towards hyperrealism, and I've been using fancy tools and advanced techniques that were tough for beginners to follow. So today we're drawing Cristiano Ronaldo using basic tools and a super simple layering method. Even if you're a beginner or just a CR7 fan, you can try this out easily. So let's get started. As always, these are the art supplies I'm going to use for this drawing, and you can pause the video right here to note them down. I'm using this 250 GSM paper from my ordinary smooth surface sketchbook, which is available in almost all the art stores or stationeries around the world. So you don't have to use any fancy paper for this specific drawing, and the drawing portion area is 10 x 12 inches. I drew the outline using the grid method, and you can find the detailed step-by-step process from making the grid to outlining on my Patreon profile. Link is in the description. Okay, so let's start the shading and detailing process. I'm beginning by adding these curved strokes while keeping the natural flow of the hair in mind. I'm using my 8B pencil with a slightly rounded tip and maintaining a constant pressure as I move along. While adding down these strokes, I'm also lightly shading some areas in between to give the hair a sense of volume even at this early stage. Don't forget that changing the length and direction of your strokes is really important. Depending on the area you're working on, adjusting these variations helps you achieve that perfect slicked back hair look of Ronaldo. I'm following the same approach for the right side of the head as well, keeping the flow of hair in mind. I'm shading this area while keeping the pressure variable on my pencil to create a soft gradient effect. I'm applying higher pressure at the back where the hair is darker and then gradually reduce the pressure as I move toward the front. This helps achieve a natural transition from dark to light, creating a perfect fade effect. Before going any further, I've decided to erase the grid so it doesn't peek through the upcoming layers. This gives us a cleaner surface for the details. And by the way, you can get access to our premium content and support this channel through Patreon. You can sign up through different membership levels and get access to all the outline and grid references, etc. We have an ever-growing library of hundreds of exclusive and real-time tutorials, and you will also get access to 4 new tutorials every month. You can also post your artworks in our active community of patrons and participate in our weekly critique sessions where I give my honest and positive critiques on your artworks. So you can improve your skills and get better with your drawing. Visit the link in description and become a premium member today. It has always been my goal to provide free tutorials and information on drawing and art-related tools to the general public. And keeping with that theme, I like to thank all these incredible individuals who backed our channel on Patreon last month. Their generous support enabled me to produce this free tutorial for all of you guys. Now coming back to the hair detailing, it's time to add another layer of hair strokes. But this time, I'm increasing the pressure and drawing darker, more defined curved lines. I'm placing my pencil right at the starting point of each strand, then flicking it upwards in a curved direction to create a sharp stroke with a tapered end. Make sure to flick your pencil in one go to avoid wavy and uneven hair strokes. Keep layering these darker strokes across the rest of the hair area, and remember, layering is the key to depth and realism. Take your time and let the texture build up naturally. And that's how we've successfully created a 3D base using just one pencil. Now let's make these hair strands look shiny and three-dimensional. For that, I'm using my flat tip mono zero eraser and carefully moving back and forth between the darker hair and adding small curved strokes to mimic the reflection of light on the strands. Since the base is quite dark, make sure to clean the tip of your eraser frequently. Graphite builds up quickly, and cleaning it will keep your highlights crisp and bright. While working on the front portion of the hair where the light is hitting the most, I'm placing the eraser strokes closer together to create a cluster for the required shiny effect. And as I move toward the back of the head, I'm gradually increasing the distance between these strokes to give the hair a more realistic texture and depth. I'm also reducing the pressure on my eraser while working on the back area, so that the highlights appear softer and naturally fall into the background. Now to make some of these hair strands pop even more, I'm switching to my sharp tip electric eraser and gently going over a few selected strokes. The contrast between soft and sharp highlights creates a beautiful dimension across the entire hair portion, giving it that polished, realistic finish. Okay, so moving on to the forehead, let's first add a base layer, and for that I'm using a B pencil. I'm keeping the pressure high while working on the left side of the forehead and moving my hand in steady back and forth motions. I'm also maintaining a low angle and pressure on the pencil to avoid any harsh strokes or patchiness. As I gradually move toward the right side, I'm starting to reduce the pressure to create a relatively lighter base gradient. I'm also layering more graphite on the naturally darker areas to build a 3D base. This kind of layering is really important. It gives your drawing depth and realism without needing too many layers, which helps preserve the tooth of the paper. A strong 3D base makes your textures look more lifelike and allows you to control highlights and shadows more easily in later stages. Now that the 3D base is in place, it's time to blend it. I'm using my medium-sized dry brush and gently going over the surface in small circular motions. These circular strokes help blend the graphite particles evenly, smoothing the area out without creating patchy spots. We haven't yet added the smaller hair details along the sides and hairline, so I'm doing that now. For the right side of the head, I'm adding these tiny straight strokes very carefully using a B pencil. If you want to create a shaved hair texture, just keep your strokes short, spaced and consistent in direction. It'll give that clean buzz cut effect with minimal effort. I'm following the same process for the left side of the head as well. Now during the shading and blending stage, the hairline smudged a bit, so I'm redrawing those strokes very carefully. To create a realistic hairline, vary the density of your strokes. Keep them lighter and more spaced near the forehead. I'm also adjusting the overall depth in the hair portion using my 8B pencil where required. You can skip this step if your drawing is looking just as dark as required. Okay, so moving on to the eyebrows now, and I'm darkening the directional lines we added earlier using my 3B pencil. I'm also filling in some new strokes between the existing ones to better mimic the natural hair flow. To achieve realistic eyebrows, always remember that the hairs at the start, closer to the middle of the face, tend to grow upward and are more spaced apart. As you move outward toward the tail of the brow, the hairs begin to slant diagonally and often grow closer together. Also, if both brows look too symmetrical and uniform, they can end up looking flat and unnatural. So a little variation in shape, stroke angle and density adds realism. The left eyebrow is looking a bit too wide at the end, so I'm cleaning up the upper portion with my mono zero eraser to refine its shape. Now let's shade the area around it to match the rest of the forehead. I'm using a 3B pencil and layering graphite where needed. The depth on the forehead still feels a bit dull to me, so I'm going over that section again with the same pencil. Just make sure to keep the pressure and angle of your pencil very low here to avoid any harsh lines or strokes. Once you're happy with the shading, it's time to blend, and I'm using a medium-sized dry brush, moving in small circular motions to smooth the graphite into a clean base. Now it's time to add highlights, and for that I'm using my kneaded eraser. I've molded it into a round tip and I'm gently dabbing it over the lighter portions of the forehead to make those areas look slightly raised. The trick here is to build a soft highlight where the center is the brightest, gradually fading out toward the edges. This gives a smooth transition with a soft, natural glow. To enhance the softness even more, I'm lightly blending over the highlights with a brush. I'm also going over the parting in the hair to make it pop further. Okay, so now let's move toward the eyes, and I'm starting by darkening the outline strokes we added earlier using my 8B pencil. I'm carefully going over those lines and shading the areas that need more depth in both eyes. Never hesitate to go back and adjust small details. It's those final adjustments that bring everything together. Next, I'm switching to a 3B pencil to start adding a base layer over the entire face area. I'm working in small sections and moving my hand in gentle back and forth motions to fill in the surface. Notice that I'm holding the pencil at a very low angle almost parallel to the paper, to avoid leaving any harsh marks. For shadowed areas like the sides of the face, I'm increasing the pressure slightly and layering more graphite to build up the depth. Now moving on to the cheek portion, and here I'm changing the direction of my strokes a bit to create an even shade. I keep layering the graphite with high pressure where shadows fall and gently reducing it in areas where I'll later add highlights. This pressure control technique is really useful. It lets you create a soft 3D base that gives a realistic look, even with fewer layers, and it helps preserve the tooth of the paper for detailing later. Since the light source is coming from the right side of the face, the left side naturally appears darker. So I'm building up graphite on this side until I reach the required darkness. I'm also shading the ear using the same layering technique. Now that the base layer is complete, I'm blending it with my medium-sized dry brush, using soft circular scribbling motions across the entire area to achieve a cohesive look. Some spots on the left still look a bit flat to me, so I'm adding another layer of graphite with my 3B pencil to boost the depth. As we discussed earlier, the right side of the face is brighter due to the light source. So to capture that, I'm layering graphite using my 3B pencil but keeping the pressure high, especially in darker areas near the nose and eyes. Then I gradually lighten the pressure while adding a base layer across the cheeks. I'm also following the same cross-hatching technique we used earlier to keep the texture smooth and even. Now I'm blending this whole portion with my medium dry brush. For the nose, I'm repeating the same shading method, adjusting pressure as needed, then blending to even out the tones and create a clean, realistic base. Okay, so now it's time to add the highlights. I'm starting by gently dabbing my kneaded eraser over the highest points of the face, like the forehead, nose, and cheeks. This eraser softly lifts off the extra graphite, making those areas look lighter without scratching the paper. I'm dabbing more in spots where I want brighter highlights. Just make sure to knead and twist the eraser every now and then. Graphite builds up on the tip, and if you keep dabbing with a dirty edge, it'll smudge your lighter areas and make them look patchy. So cleaning and reshaping the eraser often helps keep everything smooth and clean. Now to add sharp and clean skin texture, I'm switching to my Mono Zero eraser with a sharp tip. Starting at the tip of the nose, I'm moving my hand in small circular motions while applying very light pressure. These soft circular dabs help create a subtle skin texture that looks realistic and natural. For the nose tip itself, I'm pressing just a bit harder to make the highlight pop, since this is a shiny point where the light hits directly. I'm adding more of these small circular highlights around the right nostril too. You'll also notice some fine textural lines on the right side of the nose. To create those, I'm now switching from circles to gentle back and forth strokes. This motion copies the natural stretch and form of the skin in that area. Then with the Mono Zero, I'm drawing small textured lines over this area. To make these highlights work well, it's important to keep the tip of your eraser sharp. A blunt eraser can leave thick marks, but a sharp one lets you place fine, realistic skin textures. I'm also changing the length and direction of the stroke slightly depending on where I'm working. This avoids any stiff or repetitive texture. I'm building up some extra highlight texture under the eye too, but I'm being careful not to drag these highlights into darker shadowed areas. If you accidentally place bright highlights over shadows, it can flatten the form and ruin the 3D feel. Always keep highlights where the light hits and let the shadows stay dark to keep the face looking dimensional. To boost the glow even more, I'm adding a few tiny dots on the apple of the cheek. This trick gives a dewy, soft light reflection. Right now the texture is looking a bit sharp to me, so I'm softening it using a dry brush and the kneaded eraser. Just a light tap and gentle brush over the area helps blur the edges and makes it feel more skin-like. The right side of the nose also looks a bit too harsh, so I'm gently going over it with a blending stump. The goal here is not to erase the detail but to melt it slightly into the base. And as you can see, the texture immediately starts looking softer and more natural. I'm doing the same across the rest of the nose to even everything out and create a smooth, realistic finish. Make sure to clean the tip of your blending stump after working on dark areas to avoid patchiness when moving to lighter sections. This simple habit keeps your shading smooth and prevents unwanted dark smudges. I'm also dabbing the needed eraser on the bridge of the nose before moving on to the texturing process. This helps lift off some graphite to create a clean base for the highlights. Now let's define the edge of the nostril. For that, I'm using my sharp tip mono zero eraser and adding this curved stroke over the upper edge of the nostril. I'm also adding another curved stroke to define the shape of the side of the nose. I'm adjusting the depth and highlights wherever needed to get that soft 3D look. The left eyebrow portion still looks a bit less detailed to me, so I'm using my mono zero eraser and adding these slant strokes along with some blended highlights just above the left eyebrow. And look how this area instantly starts to look raised and shiny. It's these little adjustments that give life to flat areas. I'm now softening the sharp edges of the highlights by lightly dabbing my kneaded eraser over them with very low pressure. This will blend the highlights into the surrounding tones without disturbing the texture. Now let's move on to the right cheek. It's time to add skin texture here. I'm using my sharp tip mono zero eraser again, starting with soft blended highlights near the nose using small circular motions. Then I'm gently going over them with my finger to tone the brightness down just a bit. Using your fingertip like this gives you a quick way to soften any area that feels too intense. Now I'm using back and forth motions to add fine textural lines carefully. For the area under the eye, I'm adding small dots of varying sizes using the same mono zero eraser. Then I continue adding slant strokes to blend the dotted texture with the rest of the cheek. This layered mix of dots and slanted strokes helps mimic real skin texture with pores and lines in a subtle way. Okay, so now let's move on to the eye. I'm making it look shiny by adding a curved stroke on the inner fold of the upper lid. I'm also placing a few small dots in the inner corner to give it a glossy, wet look. Similarly, I'm defining the lower lash line and adding light strokes for the bottom lashes to give them some dimension. For the upper eye fold, I'm adding small strokes very carefully. The area under the eye is still missing some bright skin texture, so I'm adding these short, random length strokes close together to create a natural crease effect. I continue adding these tiny lines and strokes for the skin texture on the upper eyelid as well. I'm adding denser strokes on the brow bone to bring it forward and highlight it. This area catches light strongly, so layering highlights here gives the eye more structure. You can always adjust the brightness of any highlight by lightly going over it with a dry brush or a blending stump. This helps tone down anything too bright and blends it gently into the skin. Okay, so now it's time to add darker details. For that, I'm using my B pencil. I'm first darkening the previous strokes to define the inner corner and lower lash line. And now I'm adding small strokes for the lower lashes very carefully. I'm reducing the length of these strokes as I move toward the inner corner. This follows the natural taper of real lashes. For the upper lashes, I'm first darkening the upper eye fold and then adding strokes between some of the lighter ones on the upper eyelid. Now it's time to add the lashes. I'm drawing slightly curved strokes starting from the inner corner and moving outward. Try to keep the natural flow of the eyelashes in mind to achieve realistic results. If your strokes follow the wrong curve, the lashes can look stiff or unnatural, so observe the reference closely. Okay, so now it's time to add life to the iris. Before jumping into highlights, I'm adjusting its shape slightly. Now I'm adding small dots using my electric eraser to mimic the reflections of light in the iris. These bright reflections give the eyes a watery, lifelike sparkle. You can even adjust their diameter by going along the edges with your 8B pencil. And look how that makes the highlight appear crisp and intricate. I'm also lifting up some graphite from the lower portion of the iris to make it look shiny and 3D. I'm going back and forth between my tools, adjusting details wherever needed to make sure everything looks balanced and smooth. Now let's make the eyebrow hairs stand out more and look separate from each other. For that, I'm adding a few slant strokes in the direction of the previous darker strokes using my sharp tip mono zero eraser. This adds contrast and makes the brow look fuller without overdoing it. Just make sure not to add too many of these highlights. Too much can flatten the look and make the area appear unitoned. Now I'm adjusting the thickness of these highlights by lightly going along the strokes with my 8B pencil to bring everything back into harmony. This layering of light and dark gives the eyebrow a more natural, textured appearance. Now I'm following the same process of adding highlights and texture as we did earlier for the right eye. I'm using my sharp tip Mono Zero eraser to gently place small curved strokes and dots, carefully matching the flow and shape of the left eye. Try to keep the highlight placement symmetrical in terms of light source, but not identical. Natural differences make it look more realistic. Just like before, I am focusing on the iris, upper lid, inner corner and lash line, blending where needed with a soft touch. This repetition not only creates balance between both eyes but also reinforces the depth and shine that brings the portrait to life. Moving on to the ear, and I'm first blending the base layer using a blending stump to achieve a smooth, even surface. Now it's time to add some dimension, and for that, I'm lifting up the excess graphite from the raised portions of the ear using Mono Zero eraser. This helps separate the lighter, elevated areas from the deeper parts and adds instant structure. Now let's add some depth. I'm using my 8B pencil and just look at how the ear is already starting to look more realistic with those darker tones added. I'm also adjusting a few highlights on the nose using my Mono Zero eraser, refining areas that need a little more texture. Now let's move on to the neck and the rest of the face. I'm creating a 3D base using my 3B pencil. I'm applying higher pressure and layering more graphite in the shadowed areas while reducing the pressure over lighter parts to keep the transition soft. Using pressure variation like this is key to building a realistic gradient without needing too many layers. Similarly, moving on to the lips, I'm first defining the center of the lips by darkening that horizontal crease. Then I begin shading the surrounding portions very carefully. The chin area has some strong shadows, so I'm keeping the pressure heavier here to build up the tone. I'm layering more graphite over the lips as well until we've got the base tone ready. Next, I'm lightly blending this layer using a medium-sized dry brush. This helps smooth out the base and prepares it for future layering without losing texture. Now let's add another layer of graphite on the left side of the face using a B pencil. This adds soft depth and also brings in subtle facial texture. I'm using the same B pencil to begin adding small strokes for the mustache too. Since Ronaldo's reference image shows very short, almost shaved mustache hairs, it's important to keep your pencil tip sharp and strokes extremely short. These should barely rise off the surface, just enough to hint at the hair. You can create this effect by using the side edge of your pencil with a gentle flicking motion. Keeping your wrist steady will help control the length and direction of each stroke. Once the texture is in place, I'm blending the area gently to get a smooth, natural look. I'm continuing to layer graphite on the rest of the face using the same B pencil until I reach the desired level of darkness. And then I blend it afterwards to tie everything together. Now it's time to add the beard hair using a 3B pencil. Since this reference of Ronaldo shows very short beard stubble, I'm making sure my strokes stay small and tight. To mimic that shaved effect, keep the length of each stroke short and leave small gaps between them so it doesn't look too dense. I'm also adding a mix of tiny dots and slightly varied strokes to give the beard a more natural texture. Once that texture is in place, I'm lightly blending over the entire beard area using a medium-sized dry brush to bring everything together for a cohesive and clean look. This soft blending helps maintain the beard texture without overpowering the skin tone underneath. Now it's time to add the highlights, and I'm starting with a kneaded eraser shaped into a round tip. I'm gently picking up graphite from the lips area to lighten it up. Try not to apply too much pressure here as the texture of a kneaded eraser is quite gummy, and pressing too hard can make it stick to the paper, leaving a patchy surface. Always use a light touch to keep your surface smooth. I'm also reshaping or kneading the eraser often to keep it fresh and effective. I'm using the same kneaded eraser to lift up graphite from the left side of the face. Some of the details have faded during earlier steps, so I'm adjusting them now before moving to the next part. Okay, so now let's add brighter highlights. I'm using my Mono Zero eraser to first define the outline of the lips. I'm also adding small highlight strokes on the nostril area to make it appear shiny. These small touches help create the illusion of moisture and reflective surfaces. I'm gently dabbing my kneaded eraser onto the beard area as well to bring out the subtle skin texture beneath the beard. To make the beard hairs stand out more, I'm adding small bright strokes right beside the darker ones on the left side of the chin. This contrast between dark and light is what gives facial hair depth and realism. I'm switching tools and going back and forth to adjust the details wherever needed. Coming back to the highlighting, I'm repeating the same process of placing bright strokes beside the darker ones across the rest of the beard area. Try not to add too many of these highlight strokes. It can flatten the look and make the beard area lose its 3D effect. Use them selectively, just enough to bring out texture without overpowering it. The left side of the mustache also has these small bright strokes, so I'm adding them here too. I wasn't fully satisfied with the darker texture on this side of the face, so I'm going over it using my 3B pencil, and just look how much more detailed and clean it starts to appear. Exactly how we wanted it. I'm adding a few final touches here and there using different tools, adjusting tones and textures until I achieve the exact effect I'm aiming for. Okay, now moving on to the neck. As always, I'm laying down a base layer with my 3B pencil, keeping the pressure variable. I'm pressing harder in shadowed areas and softening up in lighter regions. This pressure control gives you smooth transitions without needing too many extra layers. I'm also adjusting the depth on the jawline and chin area where needed. I'm continuing to build the base layer across the entire neck, keeping the pencil at a very low angle to avoid harsh lines and streaks. Then I'm blending it all with a medium-sized dry brush to create a smooth base. Now to create skin texture, I'm adding slightly curved horizontal strokes using my B pencil. I'm changing the direction of these strokes based on the area I'm working on to match the natural flow of the skin. This variation adds life and natural rhythm to the texture. Next, I'm grabbing my Mono Zero eraser and carefully adding bright highlight strokes right next to the darker ones. These highlights pop even more because of the contrast, making the skin texture stand out. I'm also varying the length and direction of each stroke depending on the surface I'm working on. The center portion of the neck has a strong highlight. So to achieve this effect, I'm using my kneaded eraser. I'm applying light back and forth motions, adding curved highlights to build the desired texture. Some of the darker textural strokes faded away during highlighting, so I'm now going back in and restoring them with my B pencil to bring everything back into balance. This layering of light and dark textures builds the realism step by step, while keeping everything clean and well blended. Okay, so let's add life to the shirt now. As always, I'm starting by adding a 3D base using my 8B pencil. I'm applying higher pressure to build depth around the folds and creases of the fabric, and then gradually decreasing the pressure as I move into areas that need a lighter base. This gradual pressure shift helps give the shirt that realistic fabric flow without needing multiple heavy layers. Keep on relating to the reference image while adding this 3D base. It'll help you accurately mimic the natural flow of the shirt's folds and creases. The center portion of the shirt has some fine line textures, so I'm adding these vertical strokes close together across that section. Try to keep these lines close together and consistent in pressure to maintain the fabric structure. Continue building the 3D base for the rest of the shirt using the same pressure variation technique. Once you're satisfied with the base, it's time to blend. I'm carefully going over the shaded areas using a medium-sized dry brush. Use light circular motions while blending to preserve the structure and prevent the textures from getting lost. Now grab your Mono Zero eraser and begin adding straight strokes to define the seam portion of the shirt. I'm drawing two lines side by side with a slight gap between them to replicate the stitching or seam lines accurately. Keeping the lines clean and parallel helps convey the neatness and form of tailored fabric. For the rest of the shirt, I'm switching to my kneaded eraser and dabbing it gently over the raised portions of the folds. This lifts just enough graphite to create soft, blended highlights. And just look how beautiful the shirt has started to look. Okay, so now moving on to the right ear, and I'm following the same shading and texturing process I used for the left ear. Consistency here helps keep both sides balanced and realistic. So take your time to match tones and edges carefully. And with this last step, we are done with this super quick Ronaldo portrait drawing. Creating these free drawing tutorials needs a significant amount of time and energy. So if you found this one valuable, please show your support by liking the video. Your support keeps me inspired to bring you more creative content. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.